Good afternoon, friends, and welcome everyone to the Greater Gwinnett Reentry Alliance 2020 Better Chances Symposium. My name is Anthony Rodriguez. I'm the co-founder and producing artistic director of the Aurora Theater right here in Lawrenceville. We've been here, we've been around for 25 years now, and it is a joy. If you've driven through Lawrenceville and you've been obstructed by construction, I apologize. It is our fault. So, it is my great pleasure to present our first speaker, who will welcome us here today, Dr. Jann L. Joseph. She is the third president of Georgia Gwinnett College, and being friends with the first two, I can honestly say she's the best choice. She has spent her career working to increase educational opportunities and student success in the West Indies, Michigan, Indiana, and now right here in Georgia. It is my great pleasure to present for you the president of GGC, Dr. Jann L. Joseph.
Good afternoon, and thank you so much for that kind introduction. It is my absolute pleasure to welcome you to Georgia Gwinnett College and to our beautiful campus on a really nice winter day that looks more like spring. So we are so happy that you're here. So on behalf of the students, the faculty, and of course the staff of Georgia Gwinnett College, it is my honor to welcome you and to welcome to the campus the Greater Gwinnett Reentry Alliance and the many honorable speakers and guests for the 2020 Better Chances Symposium. I commend you all for the important work you have done and the work you will continue to do for Gwinnett County. It is my honor to welcome former Governor Nathan Deal, and I commend him for his work that he has done and for his continued support of this initiative. Thank you, sir. I want to tell you a little bit about my campus and how we serve Gwinnett and our community. But I want to ask for a show of hands. How many people have been to this campus before? Okay, so many of you all have been here. But I also saw that many people did not raise their hands. It means that this is your first time on campus. And I'm sure for many of you all who have been here, it has been a while. So I want to share with you a little bit of who we are now, what we have been doing in terms of our numbers and growth, and a little bit of what we expect to be doing. Because this campus, GGC, is a big and significant piece of Gwinnett County. We are young in years, but our footprint is impactful because again this year we are experiencing record enrollment, and we now have enrolled, based on last fall official numbers, 12,831 students. My emphasis on the one is because every one matters, and I'm sure the people in this room could understand the importance of every one person mattering. GGC's enrollment mirrors that of the population of Gwinnett County, and I was having this conversation at my table just a few minutes ago. And we need to know and remember that 75% of the students hail from the county. We serve our county. And this year makes the 6th year in a row that U.S. News and World Report, and for those of you who don't know, we all like to be mentioned in all of these national magazines, and we all like to take kudos and credit. But what we get is that we, for the 6th year, have been named the most ethnically diverse among the Southern Region colleges. And I always tell the joke that our students, if you look at their demographic, you look at their race, ethnicity, and if they were all combined, it would just be me, or maybe, as I say, Frankenstein. But they got me, because we come from across the globe in terms of our ethnicity, and we have all come to Gwinnett County to make this an amazing place and to make a difference. Because our mission and our vision is grounded in a relentless focus on students, and not just on students, but on their ultimate success And to do this, we sustain small class sizes. We keep a very impressive student-teacher or faculty ratio that is designed to stay small and intimate in a way that we support student-faculty engagement across the campus and in all our classes. So I always do this whenever I meet a group of people, especially for the first time as I'm meeting this group. And I say, now that you know more about us, I'm counting on you to tell people more about us. You are no longer able to say when you drive past on 316, what's happening over there. You know what's happening over there, and you know who's leading the charge over there. Because I aim to get up every morning and try to be a compassionate leader, focus on students, focus on sustaining a campus that's welcoming, a campus that says that every single person who steps on this campus walks away better than they came before. We are aiming to change lives in every capacity that we were allowed to change. And because of that, we are so happy that you have chosen us to spend some time with us today, because we are proud of the work we do here. And we hope that you would enjoy the rest of your time on our amazing, beautiful campus with people who care, who always, always seek to make the world a better place. Thank you for your time and your attention.
Hello, everybody. I'm the president of the Greater Gwinnett Reentry Alliance, Rachel Odell. At this time, I want to ask Russell Gray to go ahead and make his way here to join me on stage. This has been a big year. It's been a hard year of hard work, and especially planning this event. I'll tell you what, I know Karen Collette did it in 2017, and I admire the effort that it takes to pull this off. But I want to point out that you all have worked hard. Some of you are members of the GGRA, and some of you have been invited as guests, and you don't really know what the GGRA is. The GGRA is the people who comprise the organization who serve Gwinnett, the returning citizens of Gwinnett County, in many different ways all over this county every day. Essentially, we are a bridge. And who is on that bridge? You all are. Whether you be law enforcement, whether you be lawmakers, whether you be returning citizens, spiritual advisors from churches. Some of you provide employment, housing, transportation, mental health. All of you are on the bridge. And so what we seek to do in 2020 is to make this bridge stronger and wider to accommodate more people. What we do is to make the connections, to help y'all go across the bridge and connect with each other. And we hope that we'll do a better job of that this year as we look ahead. We want to be able to connect more people with better chances, and that's the name of our symposium today, Better Chances. So I'm going to bring up social media here. Our hashtag for this event is #BetterChances. Any picture you take, if you post anything on Facebook today or Snapchat, I don't do Snapchat, but you may do Snapchat, or Twitter or Instagram, hashtag it Better Chances. And if you want to tag us in it, we are at Gwinnett Reentry. That's the name of our organization online. So now I'm going to turn it over to Russell, and he's going to share a word and thank our gold and diamond sponsors. Oh, and before I introduce him, let me just say who he is. Most of you know who he is, and he needs no introduction. But he was the former president before me, and he is also one of the founding members of this organization. So he's been around the block more than a few times. So y'all give a hand for Russell Gray.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Rachel. And yes, I have been to this rodeo before, but I think I'm about to get worn out on it. But I keep saying that, but keep coming back anyway. So I know it's been a great pleasure to have been involved with what began as a coalition, a loose network of folks meeting at the Salvation Army. At that time, the field director for Prison Fellowship actually pulled it together and just asked me if I would get a speaker and a place for him to meet, for the people to meet. And it just kind of went from there. We were getting along pretty good, and then the bubble burst in 2008, and he got laid off with a lot of others. And so we started trying to just hang on to what we had. And about that time, the Gwinnett sheriff combined his efforts with the Board of Commissioners to fund a program called GRIP, the Gwinnett Reentry Intervention Program. And I showed up at the Salvation Army one day, and there were all these uniforms there, and I said, oh, what did I do wrong? Okay, but anyway, it turned out they were there to help me, and help me they have. They've done a great job working with me, and I've gotten to know Colonel Pinkard real well. I have lunch with him every now and then, and my wife wants to know, when are you going to come home from lunch? I said, well, you just can't get up and walk away from Colonel Pinkard. But anyway, it has been great. But I came up here to recognize the sponsors, and I appreciate everyone who's come, bought a ticket. Members even bought tickets, paid their dues, still bought tickets. But some also have donated to the program. And I want to start just by recognizing, I don't have time because I can't carry them all in my head, and we're a little short on time, but I'd like to have all the bronze sponsors and their guests, because those are the volunteers that help them out, stand up and let's give them an applause, because they have pitched in their $100, and that's really made a big difference here. So let's give them a call. And then the silver sponsors, they put in $300. So let's all them stand up if they would. We appreciate you all. Good. And then the gold sponsors, they pitched in $600, and I want to recognize Precision Machine and Tool Works. Unfortunately, they're down in Conyers, and they had something going on that they couldn't get up here. It's a little piece. But they made their seats available to returning citizens, and I'd like them to stand up for for Precision Machine Tool Works, gold sponsor. And then we have the Gwinnett Church is also a gold sponsor, and let's have them. There they are, right over there. Appreciate you all. And then we have Navigate Recovery. Yeah, there we go. All right. Good. Appreciate you all. And then we have Inspire Outreach. We'll be hearing more from Navigate Recovery and Inspire Outreach later on, but go ahead and stand. Inspire Outreach. Appreciate y'all. And yes, and Viewpoint Health. Does Viewpoint Health have it? I saw Danielle. Yes, there we go. Right, good. Great, right here. Appreciate you all. Yeah. Yes. They've been a sponsor every year I've had this thing, and appreciate that. And a lot of others have too, but I definitely remember going to them every year for the past 5 years, and they've always come through, and I appreciate that. But we also have a couple of diamond sponsors, and the diamond sponsors pitched in $1,000. And United Way has always been a diamond sponsor from the beginning. So are they here? Anybody with United Way, stand up. All right, good, great. We appreciate you all. Thank you. Now, they were one of the partners with the commissioners and with the sheriff's office that got GRIP program going, and we really appreciate that. And also, our last diamond sponsor is none other than Bridge the Gap Ministries, and I'd like my friend David Berger to come up right now, because I'm going to ask him to do something that he does every Friday at noon. It's about that time. and that's pray at the courthouse. So come on up, David. I want you to lead us in prayer. David's also been a long-time volunteer at the jail and the courthouse, witnessing the gospel and just reaching out to people when they're homeless, getting them a room in a motel, whatever it takes to take care of the people, feed them. Come on up, David. God bless you, brother. Lead us in prayer.
It's an honor to be here. Let's pray together. Grab a hand, please. Lord, in this room, we recognize the one who puts everything together. It's you. We recognize our dependency upon you. We cannot breathe without you. Our heartbeat goes without you. Lord, reentry has really been going on for thousands of years. It's nothing new to you. You're in the business of reconciliation, restitution, and forgiveness. Without that, I don't know where I personally would be. I'm so grateful. The room here today, we may never see each other again, but we're here for one solitary purpose, to give you the glory and the honor for what you so deserve. Thank you for what you've been doing through every single person in this room. Each one has a role to play in the big picture of all of us in this room waiting to go to court on the other side of the grave. And we just want to say thank you that you've given us this privilege to network together, restoring physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, financially, whatever way we can bless others. Thank you. We love you. And we praise you for the name of our dear Lord Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Russell. Thank you, Rachel. We are honored today to have several members of our law enforcement present with us. Gwinnett County Chief of Police, Tom Doran, Gwinnett County Sheriff, Butch Conway, Colonel Don Pinkard. And at this time, I would ask all law enforcement that's in the room, if you could just stand up, please, and be recognized. Now, it's my great pleasure to welcome to the stage Sergeant Jacob Baird. Sergeant Baird heads up the Gwinnett Reentry Intervention Program, otherwise known as GRIP. He's going to give us an overview of the great work that is being done for our returning citizens through the GRIP program at the Gwinnett County Jail. Please welcome Sergeant Jacob Baird.
Brighter up here than I expected. Hey, so I'm Jacob Baird. I'm a sergeant at the Gwinnett County Sheriff's Office, and like they said, I'm here to talk about the Gwinnett Reentry Intervention Program. To start at the beginning, it's Sheriff Conway's initiative to reduce recidivism in Gwinnett County. And the way he wanted to do that was partner with community organizations to provide resources for people when they got out. So in 2012, we started really doing that work. Well, I say really doing the work. It started well before that with Colonel Pinkard and Sheriff Conway doing research to see what the needs of the community were. But in 2012, we really started taking steps in referring people to organizations. At the time, United Way of Greater Atlanta was our primary partner, really our only partner in terms of resources to refer people to. So it started with a folder and an idea. And now we come to 2020, which is going to be a red letter year for reentry in Gwinnett County. I'm proud to say the Sheriff's Office has expanded their reentry initiative to consist of 5 people, if they'll raise their hand over here, myself included in that 5. These 4 ladies over here at the table. And we have shifted our focus from solely post-release resources, waiting for people to get out, to encompass some pre-release services as well. Some of you may have seen the releases on the barracks, which is our first therapeutic community at the Gwinnett County Jail. And that's the first in the line of therapeutic communities that we anticipate to open within this year. The next one will be a substance abuse unit. Again, going with that military theme, we're going to call it R&R, but restoration and recovery, not rest and relaxation. So thank you so much for having me today. Thank you for this opportunity to talk about reentry work in Gwinnett County. I can tell you it's amazing seeing everything shift over the last decade, how stuff happens when you start looking for resources and they start coming out of the woodwork. Because we didn't know how it was going to end up. And GGRA and GRIP have kind of grown up together in terms of when we started and moved along. And it's just been a wonderful experience. And thank you for the opportunity to participate. I think that's it. They told me 5 minutes. Do you want me to keep talking?
You only get to keep going if Rachel says you can keep going. Our first featured speaker of our program today is Burrell Ellis. Mr. Ellis served 5 terms as the DeKalb County CEO, which is similar to being Gwinnett County Commission chair here in Gwinnett. In 2015, he served time on a conviction that was later overturned. Mr. Ellis was named the ACLU of Georgia's first political director in 2016 and led its Smart Justice campaign. More recently, he's been on the task force assigned to repurpose the Atlanta City Detention Center into a community resource center. Please help me welcome to the stage, Burrell Ellis.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Anthony, for that warm introduction. I think you extended my term in office a little bit longer. It wasn't 5 terms, but I did. I was blessed to serve 2 terms as DeKalb County CEO. I want to thank the Greater Gwinnett Reentry Alliance for the good work that you do to provide opportunities to our returning citizens. I want to acknowledge Governor Deal. Thank you for the work that you've done around this important issue of reforming our criminal legal system here in Georgia and the work you continue to do. And I want to acknowledge all of our distinguished guests, our elected officials, our law enforcement, and everyone who's here today. I too am on a time frame, and so I want to jump right in to my topic today, which I have titled, A Better Chance for All. A Better Chance for All. We are living in a time of dramatic change, a time when we are facing questions about what it means to live in a nation of laws within a free society, a time when we question what it means to live in a democracy in which laws continue to have relevance to our modern day lives. Freedom of speech, equal protection under the law, protection against unlawful search and seizure, the right to privacy, due process, the presumption of innocence, the right to consult with an attorney, the right to present relevant evidence, the right to cross-examine witnesses and testify on one's own behalf, the right to a fair trial, and the right to be informed of one's rights, the promise of liberty and justice for all. These are all fundamental guarantees under the United States Constitution. They guarantee individual rights that protect us from tyrannical rule, which many Americans seldom have to think about and likely take for granted until needed. Each and every one of these guarantees was denied to me when I was wrongfully prosecuted of trumped-up charges by a local district attorney with unbridled political ambition. I wasn't accused of stealing or misappropriating any money, nor was I charged with public corruption. The district attorney intentionally misled a group of everyday citizens sitting on a grand jury into believing that a perfectly legal and common practice campaign fundraising amounted to a crime. There were 15 redundant and deceptively worded charges in all, such as theft of services and attempted extortion. At the time, I was the top elected official of a large metropolitan county, overwhelmingly elected twice by the people of that county. I had been elected by my peers from across the country as president of a national advocacy organization, the County Executives of America. And I had an ongoing and constructive working relationship with the Obama White House. At that time, I had been an attorney licensed to practice law in Georgia and the District of Columbia for almost 30 years without a single ethical blemish on my professional record. At that time, I had graduated from an Ivy League university and a top-ranked law school. At that time, I was an active citizen and volunteer, devoting countless hours of service to my church, to my community, and to civic organizations such as the Boy Scouts and Big Brothers. At that time, I was an active voter, never missing an election, even if it was a special election or a referendum vote where no one was even running for office. At that time, I was a husband, a father, a breadwinner for my family, and a supporter of worthy causes. And at that time, I had never once in my life been in trouble with the law. Yet, based solely on the accusations alone, I was suspended from office without a trial and without being convicted of any wrongdoing. So much for due process or the presumption of innocence. Once in court, the judge expressed concern about the district attorney's political antics. The judge stated that even he could no longer trust the DA's office. The DA responded by suing the judge and serving him with notice of the lawsuit in open court while the judge sat on the bench. The judge was then forced to hire a lawyer to defend himself against the DA's lawsuit. Eventually, the DA was able to wiggle enough room while tying up the judge's hands to bring an indictment against me and get a new judge appointed to oversee the case. The new judge was a former employee of the DA's office who shared political alliances and sentiments with the district attorney. Now feeling in control, the district attorney offered me a plea deal. Pick a misdemeanor, any misdemeanor. I was told by my attorney that the DA said it could be spitting on the sidewalk. And the DA added one more stipulation: resign from office. I rejected that deal and all future plea offers because I hadn't done anything wrong. The district attorney did not like my response to his offer, so he threatened to bring more charges. And he delivered on that threat. Eventually, my case went to trial twice. In the first trial, the prosecutors filed a barrage of motions to stop me from presenting evidence in my defense. They filed a total of 19 pretrial motions in all. The judge granted 18 of those motions in their favor. The purpose of a trial is to allow the jury to hear all relevant facts and then make a truly informed decision regarding guilt or innocence. But without an opportunity to tell my side of the story, it ended in a mistrial. Considering the way they had stacked the cards, that was a major defeat for the district attorney, and he seemed to take it personally. So he decided to retry the case. In the second trial, the prosecution filed even more motions asking the judge to further limit my defense. And this time, the judge declined to rule against even a single one of the prosecutor's numerous and usually absurd requests, including their motion to stop me from holding my wife's hand during court recesses or to gaze lovingly into her eyes. The judge used that opportunity to chastise and caution us to not prejudice the jurors who might see us holding hands or gazing as couples do. Throughout the entire trial, I was referred to by the prosecutors as a criminal and a liar without any rebuke from the judge. So much for not prejudicing the jury. As an added measure to shut down our defense, the prosecutors asked the judge to put my lawyers under an order of criminal contempt of court. And once again, the judge assented. That meant that my lawyers were working under the threat of being removed from the courtroom in the middle of the trial and sent to jail if they even mistakenly made reference to an item in my defense that the judge had forbidden. My defense team was in effect handcuffed. This should be unheard of in a court of law in the United States of America. It was like walking on eggshells. In spite of such enormous obstacles, I was acquitted on most counts, but not all. I was found guilty on 2 of the charges, and after the trial, one of the prosecutors publicly bragged about how much control they had over the judge. And despite my record as a leader and upstanding community member, without any criminal history or threat of violence, the district attorney asked the judge to send me to prison merely because I had refused to accept his plea offer and elected to exercise my constitutional right to go to trial. And once again, the judge agreed with the prosecutor. I was denied an appeal bond and put in immediate custody without any opportunities to make arrangements with my creditors, kiss my wife goodbye, or let our 2 young children know that daddy isn't coming home for a while. I received a 5-year sentence. This time, the judge actually deviated from the district attorney's request. He had asked that I be sentenced to 10 years. I was incarcerated for 8 months before being released on parole. I was sent to a state prison. It was not a country club experience as some have imagined. Prison is a dangerous, brutal, and inhumane environment. To send someone to prison who poses no threat of harm to anyone is a reckless act. It puts their life at risk. 2.5 months after my release, the district attorney ran for re-election. By that time, I had been stripped of my right to vote, but not my political activism. My family and I campaigned vigorously to elect someone to office who would serve with honor and respect for the people. On the night of the election, my wife and I went out on a date to celebrate the outcome we believed would come later that evening, and it did. The incumbent district attorney was soundly defeated by a margin of almost 2-1. Many voters expressed outright dissatisfaction with the manner in which he had unjustly attacked me and my family. Even now, I hear those same sentiments almost daily. 6.5 months later, the Supreme Court of Georgia unanimously reversed the conviction, citing the unfairness of the trial and my inability to present evidence to defend myself against the charges. One of my lawyers estimated that the Georgia High Court reverses fewer than 5% of all criminal convictions, and even fewer by unanimous decision. But because this was such an egregious violation of the Constitution, a mostly conservative Georgia Supreme Court was compelled to take action. Even then, the stiff-necked, stubborn-minded DA attempted to stall the outcome by asking the Supreme Court to reconsider its unanimous ruling. Within 48 hours, the court rejected that motion and again ruled in my favor, unanimously. By then, we were into the final month of my second term of office. I had been suspended from office for all but 6 months of a 4-year term. With just 17 days remaining in my term, I returned to office. In all of my studies of politics, I have not heard of another American elected official who has been maliciously indicted, tried as a criminal, wrongfully convicted, denied an appeal bond and then imprisoned, and then, after having the conviction reversed, returned to the same term of office from which he or she was removed. During my final days in office, I worked with our county commissioners and professional staff to address blighted neighborhoods, develop a solution to a water management crisis, organize a standing room only ceremony recognizing 25 outstanding citizens, assist my successor in the transition process, and I personally visited each of our senior centers, among other things. It was an active and invigorating time in my life. On December the 31st, 2016, my final day in office, I worked until midnight. My last official act was to present a proclamation to my church for its service to our community. A few months later, the newly elected district attorney evaluated the case and dropped all charges. My voting rights were restored, the suspension on my license to practice law was lifted, and the county made a gracious decision to reimburse my back pay as well as my out-of-pocket legal expenses. Thank you. Thank you. This is my story. I'm in the process of writing it in memoir form, which I hope to have published in the coming months. It's an important story to share because it illustrates, in many ways, the brokenness in our nation's criminal legal system. It is not a system built on justice, and that's why I don't call it a criminal justice system. It's a system designed to punish. We cannot adequately reform it until we address its underpinnings. What are the societal costs of thoughtlessly separating a family by removing a responsible, tax-paying head of household who poses no threat of harm to anyone and sending him to jail or prison simply because we can? We should expect the role players within the system, our judges and our district attorneys, to govern not just with their heads, but with their hearts, to care enough about restoring human lives to pursue a higher standard when they are capable than incarceration and destruction. Our criminal legal system is a system rooted in racism. It is a betrayal of America's promise of liberty and justice for all. It is a system that disproportionately targets and punishes people of color and then puts them into a permanent underclass where they are legally discriminated against and denied the rights of full American citizenship. We all bear a responsibility here. We cannot offer people a better chance while denying them an equal opportunity. We must remove discriminatory barriers to reentry restore full citizenship rights, and raise thoughtful questions regarding why those rights were removed in the first place. In many ways, I am one of the fortunate few. My family stood with me and stayed together. I got my job back with all back pay. I got my license to practice law back, and along with it, my ability to make a living. I got my reputation back. I was exonerated by the Supreme Court of Georgia, and my legal fees were reimbursed. One could make the case that I was innocent from the beginning, but so are many others who never received justice. And what about those who made mistakes and then paid their debt to society? Do we not now owe them the chance to live the remainder of their lives on the right path, lest we all suffer the consequences? As a blessed and enlightened society, we should exhibit grace. We cannot hope to offer a better chance unless we are invested in building a better world. We cannot allow our frustrations and disappointments with the way things have been to cause us to check out. We must fight to build a better world with better chances for ourselves and for the next generation. And because it's already 2020, we must remember to take our fight to the ballot box. This is why voting matters. Because elected officials make and enforce the laws that determines who gets arrested, who goes to jail, who stays in jail, and who is denied opportunity when they are released. Elected officials determine whether and how those individual liberties embedded within the Constitution are enforced. Elected officials decide who actually gets justice and how it is dispensed. So if we're going to build a better world with better chances, we have to raise the right questions of candidates for office and then get out and vote for the ones who set the right vision. Voting for president is important, but voting for president alone is not enough. Voting for governor or mayor is important, but voting for governor or mayor alone is not enough. We must also vote to elect state representatives and sheriffs and judges and district attorneys who are reform-minded. Our criminal legal system is a multi-headed hydra. Reform will come from many approaches, and we all learn from our personal experience. Here's one thing I learned. There is a vast amount of unchecked power that lies in the hands of district attorneys. That power is often abused in ways that are hidden from public view. And when it is abused, it is disproportionately targeted against people of color because the system is designed that way, irrespective of the color of the prosecutor. So, it's not good enough to vote only for the people running for the most popular offices. Those people hold lots of power, but we can't stop there. It's not good enough to elect someone based solely on what they look like. Sometimes that makes us feel good, but we have to require more. We must vote responsibly for people based on what they stand for. And if we do that in 2020, we will build a better world that lives up to America's promise: liberty, justice, and a better chance for all. God bless you. Thank you.
So I got out about 2014. For me, just me personally, that's when it really settled in on me that I did the time that I did. Once I got out and seen how much things have changed and people have changed, you know. But other than that, I don't think it was too bad because I was preparing myself. I wanted to be successful. You know, I was preparing myself. I was reading, studying, praying, just getting prepared, you know. I wasn't gonna go back. I think the biggest struggle for me was probably, believe it or not, probably finding somewhere to live. Because in most, well not most, and probably all apartment complexes, if you have a felony, I mean, it's nothing to even talk about. You might as well not even turn in the application. So what I had to do, and what most people do, have to do that to re-enter society, is find someone that owns a residence and that's willing to just give them a chance. So I stayed with my mom for about 5 or 6 months, saving up my money. I also had money saved up from when I was in the transitional center. And so that same money that I had after I got out, I still had a good portion of it. Employment wasn't really a problem for me. Once I got out, I had history in auto mechanics already. And fortunately, that's not really an industry that frowns upon having a criminal background as long as it's 7 or 10 years. You know, I already had ambitions to start my own business. And then once I got back into working in the work industry, I realized, you know, it was a better fit for me, I felt, to start my own business. My name is Ray, and I turned my second chance into a better chance.
Good afternoon. If you come after the food, you come after great speakers and videos like that, I always say, you know who your friends are. Thanks a lot. My name is Doug Ammar. It's an honor to be here. I'm the executive director of the Georgia Justice Project, and I have 10 minutes, and I have a timer. Every lawyer should have a timer for how long they speak. Otherwise, we will definitely go over. And I'm here really to talk about a couple things. Really one thing, but I want to do a sort of tell you who we are and what we do. And many of you know who we are, but let me see if this clicker works first. Oh, it does. It's great. Technologies, that's great. So first of all, it's an honor to be here. Let me just say this. We've been, I and our organization have been big fans of the Gwinnett Reentry efforts out here, so you all just doing great work. And Russell, I haven't seen Russell if he's here, but you all just do great work, and we're very glad to be involved with you all for so many years. So we're honored to be here today. But I'm really here today to talk about really one specific thing, and that's the Second Chance campaign. And I want to talk about that, but I'm going to give you some context about how we got there. So the campaign is really an effort to sort of change Georgia law around having convictions on your record. The very thing that Ray just talked about having a conviction and how it shows up every time you apply for a job, every time you apply for housing, we're trying to change that. And it needs to change. And that's what I want to talk about. That's what the campaign's about. So let me just give you a little bit more history about who we are. We're a nonprofit. We've been around for 33 years, 34 coming up this spring. We do really, I'm a 3-bucket person. You know, lawyers, we have to keep it easy because we don't get too confused here. But we do direct service. We're like a holistic private public defender. That's the first thing we've done, and we do that only in Fulton and DeKalb counties primarily. And we've done that for 33 years. And when I say holistic, what that means for us is we have social workers on our team, but we represent people free of charge, no court appointments, no government funding. But if we take you on as a client, we follow you long term, into prison and afterwards. We help with our clients' families to take them to visit, and reentry has always been part of our work for 33 years or 34 years. So that's the first bucket of our work. The second bucket of our work is also direct service. We are the only group in the state who helps people overcome the impact of a criminal record. Mainly that work has been criminal records related, but we've expanded that work, as some of you know, with our work with the Metro Reentry facility down in Fulton County, the new prison the DOC has opened up. So I'm more and more calling that work sort of reentry lawyering, removing barriers for people while they're still in, and sometimes obviously when they're out, to help them get back on their feet so they can become effective and productive. And then we do policy work. And for the last 10 or 11 years, right before Governor Deal took office, we started launching our efforts to sort of move the needle in Georgia to make it primarily around reentry or back-end work, focusing on this issue of how hard it is and all the obstacles people have when they get out of jail or prison or when their case is long over. And in the last 11 or 12 years, I think we've worked on about 19 different laws, a lot with the Criminal Justice Reform Council, some independently, and almost all of those affecting reentry. So that's just sort of who we are. But I need to sort of drill down this for a moment about why is this important. Most of you all in the room know this, so I know I'm preaching to the choir, but if you have a criminal record in Georgia, if you have a criminal record, it can impact you in many ways. The two main ways we see, again, what Ray talked about, are employment and housing. The two biggest things people need when they're getting back on their feet, whomever you are, those are what you need to be stable. But having a record, and a record is if you've ever been arrested, if your fingerprints ever ran across the pad, and the GCIC has a record of you sent up to the FBI, that is a criminal record, and when that record happens, it can impact all these things: housing, occupational licensing, voting, immigration, adoption. I just talked to a potential client the other day in the office. He and his wife, who works for the Department of Justice, couldn't adopt. They were trying to adopt someone actually in their family and couldn't because of his criminal record. He had 4 or 5 convictions 20 years ago, and he couldn't adopt because of that. So this is an issue that we see all the time. So if you have a record, it affects you in lots and lots of ways. Again, you all know that. I'm preaching to the choir. So let's talk about Georgia. If you have a record in Georgia, what happens? First of all, in Georgia, we are one of only 10 states in the country, one of only 10, that if you have a conviction, that record of a conviction is on there forever. 40 other states in the country, some of them moving very aggressively in the last couple of years, some of them in southeastern states like Louisiana and Mississippi and South Carolina and Tennessee and Kentucky, have passed laws that say if you've been convicted, we recognize that. We're not going to get rid of the conviction, but we ought to make it easier for you to get back on your feet if you show you've been rehabilitated. So 40 other states have a process by which you can go to a judge, usually the sentencing judge, the DA's office, whatever, different mechanisms, different states, that say one conviction or one part of your life shouldn't determine the rest of your life, right? And so this is what we're trying to move in Georgia. We're trying to get Georgia to catch up to the other 40, and we think, we think it's time. But the idea, again, when I've talked to a number of folks about this, and if there's some legislators in the room, I know I see a few friends, but we're not talking about getting rid of the conviction. What we're really talking about is letting your conviction be expunged through GCIC and giving a judge the opportunity to seal that record so that when folks like Ray walk up and apply for housing, that will not show up every time. If they have been rehabilitated and if a judge agrees, yes, your record shouldn't show up every time. So that's basically the idea of what we're trying to do. We know and we believe this will have a huge impact for those who have been in the system. We talk to thousands of people a year. We work with folks all over the state. We'll be down in Macon on Monday for a big expungement summit. We're working with the DA's office and the solicitor's office there. We're working with the Cobb County effort. I don't know if some Cobb County folks here, one happening in February. But the point is, we talk to thousands of people. We know the barriers, and we know this is an issue. And we represent about 1,000 people a year around the state on this issue. So let me give you some more data to make the point even stronger. This is a graph we show to shock you into submission. I don't know if you've seen this graph. This is a powerful graph. This is just a graph of every state in the country and those under correctional control, meaning this is who's in jail, prison, probation, or parole. The numbers here are jail, prison, probation, or parole. That's correctional control. Georgia leads the nation on this issue. 1 in 18 Georgians are either in jail, prison, probation, or parole. And you can see, I know you can't read this exactly. We have this set back at our table. Dominique back there has this. But the point is this: we are the leader in the country because of probation. You all know, we can talk about this, but I just want you to know that this issue of criminal records, this issue of who's under correctional control, this issue of the impact of the system is massive in this state. And this chart sort of helps reinforce that point. I like to use this chart to make even another point. So this is a chart that says on the left are those who are incarcerated in Georgia. The second is those who are under correctional control, so it adds. So the first one is about 90,000 people-ish. This is rough estimates. I'm not Justice Boggs. I'm not going to give you the exact number as of last week. But here's the thing. Here's the thing. In Georgia, about 90,000 people are in jail or prison. You add probation to that, you get up to about 430,000 people, right? That's misdemeanor probation and felony probation. So 400 and some thousand people. People who've been arrested and or convicted, along with that number, is 4.2 million Georgians. And that number is from GCIC. 4.2 million Georgians have been arrested or convicted in the state. So when you think about the impact of the system, we in our experience for 30 years and those of you all know, this issue of folks who have been once arrested, once convicted, or just getting out of jail or prison, those issues are so hard to overcome, and the numbers are so big for the state. 40% of working age adults in Georgia have a criminal record. Now, we hope to expand the law. We are working very tirelessly on this issue. Some of you in the room know, some of you hopefully have met with, or our team has met with. But just to make this, to say what the idea here is, again, is that somebody's criminal record, if you show a period of rehabilitation, then we believe that the state really should honor that and allow folks to get back on their feet by not having that record permanently impede their ability to get jobs and housing. Again, prosecutors, judges, police will always be able to see this record. The record will still be there. But the process by which someone can have that not show up every time, that they try to do things that we all try to do, jobs, housing, education, that's the idea. That's what most states have done, and that's what we want Georgia to do. We know that there's data out there. We have some slides in the back on this, but there are studies that show when states have done this, it increases public safety. If people can get jobs and housing, they're less likely to commit crime. It actually increases income for families. It increases tax base. A number of studies around the country have documented this when specific states have passed these laws. So, and again, we believe this is the right thing to do, and it makes sense. So you say, great, Doug, you've sold me. I'm sold. I saw the big numbers. I get it. I'm here. I believe. What do I do? Well, you can sign up for the campaign. Now, what that means is that we have a campaign. The first time in our office, that we've been around for a while, we've never done a campaign. The campaign is not bill specific. I'm not asking you to support X or Y or Z bill. The idea of the campaign is we want you to sign up to say, we believe in this idea. Georgia should do this. How can we help? If you sign up, we will put you on a mailing list, let you know when bills are coming up, let you know who to call and when. As I speak, I think there's almost 7 different bills on this issue alone. One dropped this week, as a matter of fact. We are working on a bill, by the way, with a number of folks know, but the point is this is not bill specific. We'll let you know when these bills are hitting various committees, and you can call your legislator, you can call email your legislator and say we support this idea. You can also show up. We have 2 days at the Capitol. Some of you know and partners in some of this effort. For the last 9 years, we have sponsored an event we call Justice Day. It's the only time at the Capitol when there's a criminal justice effort. When I started showing up at the Capitol about 10 years ago, I didn't realize that nobody was having a day of focus on criminal justice, so we started that effort, and now we have over about 40 different organizations that are partners. Had 500 people show up last year. That day is February 27th. You can come and help us and push for these kinds of issues and these kinds of laws on that day. You can also show up on February 11th, which we're calling Second Chance Day at the Capitol. We're meeting at Central Presbyterian right across the street, and we're going to push specifically on these bills. Whatever bill gets closest to the line, again, we are not right now focused on whichever, we want a bill to get across the line, and we think there's a chance for it to happen. So these are ways you can help. All right. This is some of our contact information. Again, it's an honor. I'm hopefully right on time. Where's Rachel? Rachel, I'm right here. Rachel, are we good? I'm wrapping it up. So it is an honor to be here. I'll be sticking around for the rest of the time, and I just really commend this effort up in Gwinnett. I commend all of you, former friends or old friends and new friends alike, who are focused on this issue to help make Georgia better for those who've been engaged with the system. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon. My name is Trey Lewis. I'm the founder and CEO of Good Landing Recovery. Very excited to be with you today. Rachel, Russell, the privilege to share about the issues that we're facing in the realm of drug addiction, and to really invite all of us to participate, because it's going to take a combined effort to make a real impact. We started a little over 2 years ago with about 3 employees in a clinical office and 1 client. And now we've grown to 70 clients, approximately 30 staff, and 10 properties plus our clinical office. The Good Landing Recovery team is right over here. If you guys would stand up, please. Celebrate them. So, very excited about that team and clients that have joined us today. But as you hear the sound of my voice, there are 20 million drug addicts and alcoholics in the United States over the age of 12 years old. 300 million worldwide with a 20% success rate. And so whenever you look at numbers, and I'm not up here to be doom and gloom, but whenever we look at those types of staggering statistics and numbers, and we just think, what are we going to do about this? You know, watching overdoses and just watching and talking to families. A father calling me just a couple of weeks ago while I was preaching in Rochester, New York, and his son still on the couch inside of his house, dead of an overdose. While, you know, and I mean, just the reality and the horror of the things that we're facing, and to be able to make an impact. We started to not just be another program. We are the only Christian partial hospitalization and intensive outpatient program in the Atlanta area that I am aware of. And what that means is that we're a full medical clinical program, a holistic approach. We have a staff psychiatrist, we have a certified personal trainer, we have 2 nurse practitioners, 4 master's level therapists, along with many staff and advocates who are recovery enthusiasts to be able to fight this and to create a program that has real impact. And then in my opinion, obviously with my life, by the time that I was 24 years old, I'd been through 10 treatment centers, multiple DUIs, and I tried so desperately to lay hold of a life. I was raised in a family. I was on a tennis scholarship, a full tennis scholarship here in Georgia, and to feel that disconnect and to understand whenever your entire family has written you off as hopeless and you're desperately trying to bridge that gap and you're thinking, how, I want this. Like, I want this more than my therapist. I want this more than my friends and family. I want this more than any of my support system, but somehow not being able to bridge that gap. And it wasn't until I joined the United States Air Force that I met Jesus out at Vandenberg Air Force Base in California, and he radically transformed my life. And to incorporate that, what is oftentimes a very faith-resistant community, and to see that he really is the game changer, and to unapologetically be who we are, but to do it in an approach that no matter where you're at in your faith journey, no matter who shows up, what their affiliation may be or what lifestyle or anything like that, to be able to do that in a way in love and to accept in acceptance, and just to be there for them and help them walk this out. Also remembering my time during the Air Force in just a difficult time right before I became a Christian, that I had a command chief master sergeant that saw me at one of my lowest points and said, I believe in you and I want to mentor you. I see leadership on your life. And just to have somebody to believe in you at your lowest point whenever they shouldn't have is a game changer. And so that's the environment that we've created over at Good Landing, and we're seeing incredible results. So again, our table's right back over there. We've got some literature, so if we can help, or if you know anybody that's struggling with addiction or alcoholism, please come and see us, and we'd be honored to serve. Bless you guys.
And now we come to a very special point in our program. This year, the GGRA wanted to institute a new award that will recognize the efforts and accomplishments of the returning citizens of our community. Russell Gray will be presenting this award on behalf of GGRA to its inaugural recipient. Russell, please come to the stage. This award is in honor of Governor Nathan Deal, based on the outstanding work that he has done working across party lines to provide second chances to returning citizens. His initiatives created momentum for all of the organizations like GGRA who work in the area of reentry. In the future, this award will be given to a returning citizen who has made the most of his or her second chance. Today, we recognize the namesake of this award. It is my honor to present the Governor Nathan Deal Second Chance Award to Georgia's 82nd Governor, Nathan Deal. Let's welcome Nathan Deal to the stage.
Well, thank you very much. I didn't get an allotment of time, so I'll try to be mindful of your time today. I appreciate this honor. In some ways, I feel like I am a recovering person after 8 years as the governor. It is different. As I look across this room today, the thing that comes to my mind is to say thank you for what you're doing. Thank you on behalf of all of those who are returning citizens, all of those who are seeking a second chance. They can't do it on their own in most instances. It does take somebody being there to help them. Now, Doug, where'd Doug go? Well, he said that part of his statistic that was so shocking was that, I believe he said the statistic was that 1 out of every 18 Georgians was under some form of correctional control. Well, it's improved because when I first initiated in 2011, my first year in office, an effort to have criminal justice reform, one of the statistics that I used as I spoke to various groups, audiences, Rotary clubs, Kiwanis clubs, etc., was that it was 1 out of every 13 Georgians were under some form of supervision, correctional supervision. Well, it's shocking when you tell them that, and it takes a second or two for it to sink in, and then I was always amused. They'd be sitting around tables just like you are here today, and it wasn't but just a few seconds. They'd start looking around at the people at their table. Then they'd look around at the people at the other tables, trying to figure out which one was one of those 13. But the point of all of that is that it takes educating people before they understand the significance of making drastic changes. We started in that first year of 2011, started by appointing the Criminal Justice Reform Council, and they began to meet and they began to make recommendations that were brought to the second session that I presided over as governor in 2012. We decided that what we would do is we would start on the front end of the problem, so to speak. We would start with those who were classified as nonviolent, but who nonetheless had violated the law and were therefore subject to going into our state prison system. At that point in time, we had the 4th largest prison population in the country, even though we were only the 10th largest state. Now, we are since that time, we are the 8th largest state, and our prison population is now about 6,000 to 8,000 less than it was projected to be back in 2011. So we've done a lot of good things. The first front end of it, and I'll be brief, was to deal with those people who truly needed a second chance. Those were the use of accountability courts, the drug courts, the DUI courts, the mental health courts, and now the type of those courts continues to expand, family courts and a variety of others that are coming to be, which I commend those who are activists in this effort for being imaginative, for trying to tailor this to the needs of the people that you see and that you come in contact with. We then worked our way through the system. Adult nonviolent offenders began there. The second, it unanimously passed the General Assembly. Second year was the juvenile reforms. It unanimously passed the General Assembly. I jokingly say, I didn't think you could ever pass anything unanimously, not even a motion to adjourn. But they did. And as we went through those 7 years of presentations of legislative reforms, there were very, very few dissenting votes. Why? Because I think we did a good job of educating the public and educating members of the General Assembly and their constituents as to how important these measures were. But by the very nature of it, toward the end of the system was when we began to deal with reentry. And it is what you're talking about today and what you're working in, and I commend you for that. But we started back a little earlier, too, for those within the prison system. I said, I want to know what's the most common characteristic of those who are incarcerated in our state prisons. We did a study, and it came back rather shocking in some respects that almost 7 out of every 10 people who were in our state prison had dropped out of school and did not have even a high school diploma. So I said, well, that's where we ought to start. Now, we had GED programs within the prison system, but they were somewhat limited. And then we realized that even a GED in and of itself nowadays is not necessarily enough to get you a job. And so we began to ask the community of those who were teaching technical skills, blue-collar skills, to come into our prison system and give inmates there who were willing, and there again, that is the amazing part about it. Almost all of them were willing. They wanted a chance. They wanted to make themselves better, and they wanted to be able to come out and be successful in society. So we did that to try to improve their chances of getting out and being successful and not being a recidivist. But there are still major obstacles. They've already been identified. I say the two top ones are having a place to live and having a job. If you have a secure place to live, instead of being required to go back into the environment in which you got in trouble in the first place, your chances of not coming back are greatly enhanced. And then, of course, employment. And the ability to not have a felony on your record is an important impediment with the employment opportunities, and the expungement movement is one that I think you will see continue to grow. I have been asked, and I've been serving on a national organization dealing with recommendations across the board on criminal justice reform, and one of those areas is in the area of expungement. And I think that there are certainly some things that can be done and perhaps almost should be done. And I thank Doug and his organization and the others of you who are trying to make that effort possible, because it is a tragedy to see someone who has really done everything they can to rehabilitate themselves, but when they fill out the application form for a job, we call it checking the box, that as soon as you check that box, have you ever been arrested or have you ever had a felony conviction, you don't much have a chance of getting past the human resources person for that particular place you're applying for a job. We set the example at the state level, and we abolished the check the box for state jobs. And many other municipalities and counties, some others, have followed that example for their employment, for their people working for them at that governmental level, and I commend them for doing that. It is very difficult, however, to get it into the private sector, and probably the only way you will get this job opportunity to be opened up is in the area of expungement. Now, this national group I'm working with are dealing with, across the board with a lot of different things and recommendations. One is in the area of mandatory minimum sentences, which is another real issue that needs to be dealt with. We dealt with it to begin with. We started dealing with it at the state level, but it is still one that has not been completely accomplished in terms of that. What it does is it restores the discretion back to the judge rather than the legislative mandate that no matter what you might think, Judge, this is the mandatory minimum that you must impose. So we're making a lot of progress. And as you go to the General Assembly this session, and it will begin next Monday, the big day Monday, you know. I have my first day of teaching up at the University of North Georgia. The General Assembly goes into session, and the national championship is going to be played that night. I mean, that's a... I can tell in what order you think that is important. But we are in a time when change can happen. I think for the longest time, the idea was that you couldn't even talk about changing when reforms within the criminal justice system, because if you're a politician, and of course to get those changes you had to be talking to people who were elected individuals, they were afraid that somebody was going to label them as being soft on crime. But with people like your sheriff here, who has taken the initiative on many of these kinds of programs, it takes that kind of sting away and that stigma away. And Burrell Ellis, my friend, thank you for that very enlightening and encouraging statement. It took a lot of courage for you to do that, and I appreciate that fact, and keep working on it. There are a lot of injustices within the system, and we have to deal with them, but we have to deal with them slowly. I think, looking back, that one of the smartest things I did was to appoint that Criminal Justice Reform Council and take the issue incrementally. Had we asked the General Assembly to take every reform that was passed during the 7 years following the recommendations and try to ram them through in one legislative session, we would not have been successful. And one thing I have learned in politics is success breeds success. So when you make one reform and you can show the positive results of it, it makes it a whole lot easier for you to come with future reforms. And that's exactly what has played out in our state. But in conclusion, thank you for this honor. Thank you for so many of you who are so dedicated to the good cause. You know, there are a lot of good people who make mistakes. And to not give them a reasonable second chance is not right. That is not justice. So thank you for your efforts in that regard. I truly am honored by this recognition today. Thank you.
I struggled with addiction for 10 years, on and off, and as the years went by, my addiction progressed. It finally led me to Gwinnett County Jail. When I went into Gwinnett County, I was completely hopeless. I had been living on the streets. I had so many medical issues that the only way that I could get treated was to go to jail. My mom did come pick me up, but I still had nowhere to go. So I ended up going to a sober living house, and so that was basically my last chance. I'd been to homeless shelters. I did not have insurance. I was unable to go to any families' houses, and so they would take me there. I had a really hard time trying to find somewhere to live after sober living because I had evictions. I didn't really have help. I didn't have a whole lot of money because it was kind of eating me up, the sober living bill. Finally, I was able to move out. I found a guy that would rent to me privately owned. I did all this by myself. I was working on my credit. You know, there wasn't a lot of resources for me trying to figure and navigate through everything. I just was kind of doing it on my own. Looking back now, I wish that there was more support for me, like that I could go into, you know, talk to someone and ask them, like, hey, like, how do I, you know, find a place to live that isn't like in a horrible conditions, even with an eviction and a record, or like, hey, how do I get hired here, and what do I wear, and what do I say in an interview? All of those things would have been helpful if I would have had those. I started the cleaning business when I had my son. I had been with the commercial real estate company for 2 years prior, and I loved being there. They were the best people ever, but when I had my son, I did not want to miss out on his life like I did with my daughter. So I took the time to be a stay-at-home mom, but we still needed income. So I started the cleaning business. It's really blessed me because I can create my own schedule and be with my son, and you know, but it wasn't necessarily a necessity for financial as much as it was for like my own mental health, because since I've been sober, I've been working and on a routine, and that's something that somebody in sobriety really needs to have to maintain their sobriety, is schedule, routine, and just, you know, kind of the same thing going every day. My name is Carson Melton, and I turned my second chance into a better chance.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's a good-looking crowd here today, and I'm so happy to be able to stand up here with you guys and tell you a little bit about Navigate Recovery and what we do. But before I get to that, I just wanted to mention how important reentry and addiction recovery is, and not only to this group, but it's evidenced by the people that are here today. Governor Deal, obviously, what a great advocate he's been in this area. Senator Underman, who's been a tremendous asset to our community, reforming addiction care in our community. Greg Kennard, who is our representative here today, who's going to get to speak after me, probably do a much better job too, I bet. He looks better, I can tell you that. And so that just speaks to the importance of the subject. So as the slide said, I'm Farley Farge. I'm a person in long-term recovery, and currently my condition's been in remission for over 17 years. In fact, 17 years, 3 months, and 1 day. And my recovery has allowed me to be a better husband to my beautiful wife, a better father, a son, a brother, an uncle, and a better citizen. And I'm able to stand up here today and speak to a crowd like this, and so recovery actually works. Along with that, I also blessed to be the co-founder of Navigate Recovery with my wife Susan, and our great team, all of whom are at the table here. If y'all don't mind making a stand up for just a moment, give them a round of applause. As you can all see, clearly Susan is the better half of the group, and I'm thankful she is the face of recovery in our community. Our vision here at Navigate Recovery is pretty simple. It's a community that treats addiction as a chronic condition and those that are affected with dignity and respect. Why do we treat it as a chronic condition? Well, because it is. It's medically accepted, and it's now scientifically proven that it's not much different than any other chronic medical condition, be it diabetes, heart condition, cancer, you name it. But we don't treat it that way. In dignity and respect. Doesn't everybody deserve to be treated with dignity and respect? Our mission is to serve individuals and families affected by addiction, connecting them to the resources that they need, and to remove barriers that prevent them from getting and staying well. We are an authentic recovery community organization, which is an independent, nonprofit organization led and governed by people, guess what, in recovery. Recovery community organizations are an important part of the continuum of care for recovery because we encourage peer-based support services in the community, and we fill gaps in the current continuum of care. So we step into that place and we walk alongside people for a season to connect them to recovery. But I want to have a little audience participation here for a second. So if I could ask you a couple of questions, just 2 questions, it's really easy. How many people here know someone that's been affected by the addiction crisis? Okay, I think it's pretty safe to say that everybody's hand went up on that one. Okay, here's question number 2. How many people have someone in your immediate family that's been affected? uncle, brother, sister, mother, father. Well, look around. Just take a look around. Keep your hands up for a moment. Just take a look around. I would say about 80% of us have fallen into that category, maybe 90. Believe me, I get to ask that question a lot. And every time I get the same results. And I want you to know that you're not alone. This is not an isolated disease that we're facing here today. In fact, here's some numbers for you if you want to put some parameters around it. 25% of U.S. children live with a parent who abuses alcohol. 20% of all newborn substance exposure begins prenatally. 50% of children in foster care are there due to prenatal substance abuse. 80% of children in welfare cases involve substance abuse. 70% of victims of sex trafficking are substance abusers, and 90% of domestic violence involves substance abuse. Of course, there's homelessness and bankruptcy and workplace productivity, suicide escalation, a whole host of other reasons that addiction impacts everyone in our community. But here's one that's a little closer to home for this group. According to the National Institute on Drug Abuse, in June of 2019, in a report, they say that the substantial prison population in the United States is strongly connected to drug-related offenses. Some research shows that an estimated 65% of United States prison population has an active substance use disorder, and another 20% were under the influence of drugs or alcohol at the time they committed a crime. 85%. 85% of the people in our jails and prisons are there because of addiction. Folks, we can't incarcerate our way out of this problem. But we must have a balanced approach that includes law enforcement, that includes the judicial system, that includes appropriate treatment and aftercare. Aftercare. Here, we're going to drill down a little bit more. Here's some numbers right here in Gwinnett County. Since 2012, we've had a 106% increase in overdose deaths. Now, that's all overdoses. That's not just the opioid crisis we're talking about, by the way. I don't know if you heard about the report last week. The GBI says the opioid crisis is bad, but meth is worse. More people are dying in Georgia from meth overdoses than they are opioid overdoses now. But I'm going to drill down a little bit further. I'm going to get a little more personal. That's my grandkids. And that cutie in the back, that's Abriana. Abriana's 10 years old. And my wife, Susan, and I were blessed with the opportunity to raise her for 7 years of her life because her mom, who was pictured in the video just before me, wasn't able to care for her. And like many families faced with a medical crisis, we stepped in the gap and we took care of her. And we raised her. We did what was necessary for our family. And that little guy in the front, his name's Denver. He's going to be a year old soon. It's hard to believe. He was about 8 months old when that picture was taken. And like his sister, he's born into a family who have a long history of alcoholism and drug addiction. We're genetically predisposed to it. And like our family, we know that there's a strong likelihood that they may have to seek treatment in their lives, or their children may need treatment. And we don't want them to have to experience the struggles that we went through when their mom wasn't able to get the help that she needed. For 10 years, we worked at that, trying to get her help. Now, Susan and I are both people in long-term recovery. We're actively involved in addiction and support recovery in our churches. We are still very involved in that today, as you will see. And we thought we knew a little bit about this. And as difficult as it was in my own recovery, I can tell you that when a loved one is being affected, it was almost overwhelming, and at times it was. We spent time in every major medical, mental health facility in the Atlanta area, and I can tell you that we would anxiously wait for a phone call when we were going to have an opportunity to meet with those professionals in those facilities and talk about how we could address this as a family. And we would get that phone call, and after a few times around, we realized that when the phone call came and they said it was time for the family session, that was really code for your insurance has run out and you need to take your daughter home. And the last time that we experienced this, we sat with a social worker in a major medical facility here in the Atlanta area, and for about 30 minutes we talked about making a plan and how we could step away from this and things could be better. And at the end of that discussion, the young lady handed us a list. It was one page, front and back. I told you that Susan and I have been around support and recovery, and we thought we knew a little bit about this, so we looked at the list and we realized that about half the places that were on that list were not even in existence anymore. And what was even worse was at the bottom of the page, they had printed the date. The list was 3 years old. Now, folks, I think we can do a better job than handing out 3-year-old lists to people and tell them, good luck, we hope you have a nice life, we'll see you next time. That's no way to treat addiction. You won't find us handing out a list at Navigate Recovery, by the way. But let me show you something else. This is what recovery looks like. That's a family in recovery. We are a family in recovery. That's our daughter, Carson, the one you saw beforehand, with our grandson, Denver, and Abriana with her dad. And as you can see, now Mom has a little over 5 years in recovery. Yes, thank you. She's reunited with her daughter. Dad's in long-term recovery too, by the way, and then you can see the look on that little girl's face. It's amazing. Recovery happens, folks. People do recover from this. In fact, in Gwinnett County, there's almost 93,000 of us. Guess what? We're your neighbors. We're your coworkers. You're standing next to us in the line at the grocery store. We're sitting next to you at church, at your place of worship. There's probably a few of us in this room. I know over on this side there is. And that's our team right there. That's several of our team members. And believe me, we know how to have fun in recovery too. I'll tell you a little bit about our programs, and I'm going to step away and just let you know that we have two primary programs that we're running right now. The first one is our Lifeline ED program. Through our Lifeline program, we're able to provide recovery coach services. And what's a recovery coach? That's a person that's in long-term recovery. So this is peer-based supports. And we do that in all 5 of the Gwinnett County Hospital emergency rooms within 60 minutes of receiving a call when someone has experienced an overdose or are at risk for an overdose or alcohol. So that includes not just opioids, that includes all the substances and alcohol. And guess what? We do this 24/7, 365, and it doesn't matter if that call comes in at 2 in the afternoon or 2 in the morning. In fact, I think we had one just day before yesterday. Yes, Tori's nodding her head. We'll be there within 60 minutes to meet with that person. We connect with that peer in the emergency department, and then we offer them encouragement and support. We try to get them connected to recovery. But that's just the beginning of the relationship. With their permission, we follow up with with them weekly for the first 90 days. Every week, we place a phone call. And then bi-weekly, every other week for the next 90 days. And then monthly for up to a year. And why do we do that? Well, because studies have shown that if people can get connected to recovery and stay connected to recovery for up to 5 years, they are likely to stay in recovery for the rest of their lives. See, my grandma used to always tell me, if you want to learn how to do something well, you ought to hang out with people that know how to do that. Right? Common sense, isn't it? So what's next? Well, the continuum of care in our county is growing. Thank you, Trey. Due to Trey's efforts and Greg's efforts and others, but it's not nearly enough. So in a few short weeks, we're planning to open the doors of our new women's residential recovery center called Lightway Recovery in Flowery Branch in Hall County, just over the county line, not very far, just past McEver Road. The property is a former bed and breakfast, which when we're complete with the renovations will be able to house 25 to 30 women in a long-term residential program where they'll be supported with dignity and respect as they begin their journey to a lifelong recovery. Why do we choose women? Well, we have a daughter that suffered. Also did mention that we have 4 other daughters, so that's 5, and a granddaughter, right? I didn't mention all the female cats that we have. And, but now we got a grandson, so I think God's prepared me for this, don't y'all? God has a plan. So finally, I just want to say thank you for letting me talk and listening to me blabber on up here. I want to thank you, our good friend Russell Gray. Thank you, Russell. Because what you don't know is that Russell was one of the first people that met with our daughter when she was incarcerated here in Gwinnett County Jail. And he was also her pastor at her wedding. So Russell and Nancy, you have a special place in our hearts. So I also want to say thank you to GGRA, Rachel and Brent, wherever you are, Brendan, I'm sorry, and for the important work that you're doing here. And I want to say thank you to all of you for coming here today and listening to me speak.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak for just a few moments. We're all here today because we share a vision to improve our correctional systems and reentry process. Thank you, Governor Deal, for changing the conversation and the momentum that you have created with reform. Like many of you, my journey with criminal justice began with my faith. I am a follower of Christ. I am a minister in the community. I take very seriously the teaching of Christ, and there is no ambiguity about the priorities of Jesus. I was hungry, and you fed me. I was thirsty, you gave me drink. I was naked, and you clothed me. I was a stranger, and you took me in. I was sick, and you looked after me. And I was in prison, and you visited me. Jesus' first public teaching, he grabbed the scroll of Isaiah in the temple, and he quoted, "The Spirit of the Lord is on me, because he has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim freedom for the prisoners, to set the oppressed free." It's not lost on me that Jesus was crucified between 2 thieves, 2 felons. They sat on death row together. Prison ministry was not an auxiliary or peripheral mission of Jesus. It was his agenda. And it's a commitment to that faith idea that led me to start a church that almost exclusively invests its time, staff, financial resources into a faith-based transitional program called Inspire Outreach that works with the marginalized and the disenfranchised. The folks who knock on our door in need of our program services are homeless, they have limited education, they have a mental health diagnosis that has led to addiction and substance abuse, and usually have a felony background. We work with county jails, state prisons, and even federal prisons as a viable reentry option. We even work with the accountability courts here in Gwinnett. So after 20 years of serving in this space, we've began to realize that there are two primary forces at work. There is behavior, and then there is structure. In our program, we work on the individual's behavioral issues to change their lives, but we've also noticed that you have to look at the big picture. There's a macroscopic perspective. There is a structure and a system at work. My deep dive into this structure has made me aware that it is underpinned by policy and legislation. It was that revelation that led me to run for elected office. I am now a state representative, passionately trying to positively impact continued criminal justice reform. I really have no political ambition, never have, but I do care about people, and in particular, I care about these people, the marginalized, the disenfranchised, the folks that all of us care about in this room. I'm using my new political position to get an even deeper look into our state systems and the state structure. I have met with all the relevant agencies. I have them in my phone now. We're on a first-name basis. I have regular communication with Department of Corrections, Community Supervision, Pardon and Parole. I'm in the middle of touring all of our state prisons, of which there are 34. I'm about halfway through that list. We'll finish the other half up after session. The combination of my work at Inspire and now as a legislator has granted me greater access and proximity to this structure and system, which has created a greater understanding. Understand literally means to stand under. You can't understand something until you're close enough to stand under it. From a distance, it looks one way, but when you get up close and personal, it's a completely different perspective of understanding. So I have 4 remarks. When you stand under our prison system, you understand the connection between educational performance and incarceration. We have roughly 60,000 prisoners in our state system, and as Governor Deal mentioned, most of them are school dropouts with a very low literacy rate. Literacy is almost a perfect spot-on predictor of the way that a person's life will turn out. It is commonly known that 3rd grade is the greatest predictor. A child who is not reading on level by 3rd grade is significantly more likely to spend time in corrections. Some states have even used this metric to determine future prison populations and prison construction. Bottom line, if you're not reading on level at 9 years old, we're going to build you a jail or a prison cell. What is alarming is that right now, 2/3 of Georgia 3rd graders are not reading on level. We have a crisis on our hand. When you stand under our prison system, you understand that our correctional system is filled with the poor. The overwhelming majority of men and women who are locked up in our state were represented by a public defender. They did not have the financial means to lawyer up. They had to take what they could, which is often inadequate. I know that many of our prisoners, if they had the economic ability for a top-tier attorney, would not have even been convicted and most certainly would not have received the sentence they received. I am in complete agreement with Brian Stevenson, the author of Just Mercy. I'm sure you're familiar with the film that's just come out. Brian says that in our current criminal justice system, you are treated better if you are rich and guilty than if you are poor and innocent. Therefore, wealth, not culpability, is determining our judicial outcomes. Thirdly, when you stand under our prison system, you understand that people of color are overrepresented in our corrections. Nationwide, we have more African American men that are justice involved in our correctional control system. There's more African American men today in corrections than were enslaved in 1850. In the state of Georgia, African Americans represent 30% of our general population. They represent 61% of our prison population. It's not that people of color are more criminal in nature. This ratio reveals that we have racial bias in our system from beginning to end. Finally, when you stand under our prison system, you understand the connection between mental health and incarceration. The #1 provider of mental health services in our state is Georgia State Prisons. More than Viewpoint Health, more than Georgia Regional, more than the psychiatric wards of our hospitals. Georgia is number 47 out of 50 in terms of overall mental health access and care. One mental health watchdog ranks us as number 50 for access of care to adults. And when you don't support it on the front end, we are locking it up on the back end. So when we inventory our state prison population, one could argue that we have criminalized poverty, that we have criminalized race, and we have criminalized mental health. I want to again thank everyone in this room who is working hard for criminal justice solutions. I'm deeply grateful for the work that has been done, but make no mistake, there is still a lot of work to be done, and I look forward to serving with you. Thank you, GGRA, for this venue.
Greg Kennard is smart, inspiring, and ridiculously handsome. Life is not fair. Before we come to our final featured speaker, I want to take a moment to recognize any of the elected officials in the room. If you represent and serve constituents at the local or state level, please stand at this time and be recognized. Our final speaker is Jeff Bates. Jeff has a fantastic story of redemption and forgiveness after struggling with drug addiction. You're in for a treat because following his testimony, Jeff will perform his original song, 1 Second Chance, which he had the privilege of performing live at the Grand Ole Opry. Please welcome to the stage, Jeff Bates.
I'm not good at standing behind podiums. I've heard some amazing people speak today with amazing lives, amazing intentions. And then I look across the room here today at all of you. God bless you all. Seriously. I wish I could see this everywhere I go, with this many people gathered together for a common cause to help criminals like me change their lives, giving them opportunity to walk outside a jail cell and start over the right way. Thank you. I want to tell you a little bitty joke, okay? Because this has been a mighty serious day. The book of Jeremiah tells us that God says in the book of Jeremiah, before you were ever conceived in the womb, I knew you. That's a huge statement. Later on in the book of Jeremiah, God says, for I know the plans I have for you, not to harm you, but to prosper you, so that you may have a hope and a future. So we're all here today by God's design. We're all here today, God's plan, working on it every day for us. And that leads into my joke. Moses and Jesus and this old man are playing golf. And Moses steps up and he hits the ball. And it goes way up in the air and it comes down toward the water. And right before the ball hits the water parts. Ball falls right between the walls of water, rolls right up onto the green, into the hole. Hole in one. Jesus steps up and he hits the ball and it goes way up in the air and it comes down toward the water. And when the ball gets to the water, it just lands on top of the water, bounces a couple of times, rolls right across the top of the water, up onto the green, right into the hole. Hole in one. The old man steps up to hit the ball. And when I say old, it means he looks like he can't hardly even carry the golf club. But he steps up and he pops the ball, and it goes way up into the air, higher than Moses and Jesus, and then it comes down toward the water. And right before the ball hits the water, this fish jumps out of the water and grabs the ball in its mouth. And before the fish can sink down under the water with a ball in its mouth, an eagle swoops down and he grabs the fish in his beak and he carries the fish and the ball way up in the air and drops them. And down, down, down they fall, and the fish lands on the green 2 feet away from the hole. And the impact of the landing pops the ball out of the fish's mouth, right into the hole. Hole in one. And Moses looks at Jesus and says, man, I hate playing golf with your dad. And I share that because it's funny. But to me, it's a great illustration of how God, after saying that He knows us and He has a plan for us, is tirelessly working every day, every minute, every second of every day of our lives, getting us to the point that He wants us to be, that He had planned all along. Even when people like me who have different plans fight it all the way. I was born in Mobile, Alabama in 1963. When I was 3 months old, my mother gave me away. At the same time that was going on in the great state of Mississippi, there lived a sharecropper and his wife. And their heart's desire was to have as many children as God would give them. And in the middle of December 1963, they were awakened at 4 a.m. in the morning by the sound of a baby crying outside their window. They ran and threw open their front door, and there on their front doorstep, wrapped in a blanket in a basket, was a 3-month-old baby. They brought me inside, and as they checked me out, they realized that the blanket I was wrapped in was covered in cigarette burns. My body had those same burns. I had one baby diaper. It was soiled. I was wearing it. I had one baby bottle half full of spoiled milk, and I had double pneumonia. And so this young sharecropper went out and he found somebody to let him in a little country store. He bought milk and diapers and medicine, and they started nursing me back to health. And in the meantime, they launched this massive search for my biological parents. They didn't have a whole lot of money. They had enough for newspaper ads. They didn't have internet. Al Gore had not invented it yet. But they ran newspaper ads in the states of Alabama, Louisiana, and Mississippi for a whole year. Nobody ever showed up to claim me, and the circuit court judge in Columbia, Mississippi, signed the papers allowing them to adopt me, and I became a Bates. That's how I got my name. I love telling people God's got a sense of humor because about 3 years after that, He started sending kids their way. They wound up having 8 of them. They're all blonde-haired and blue-eyed, and it never occurred to me that I wasn't. When I finally learned about the adoption, it was painful to me because for the first time in my life, I looked around and I saw the obvious difference in me and my brothers and sisters. And I felt like I didn't belong anymore. I felt like I didn't fit in. I was even told that by some people. Not my mama. My mama was a beautiful person, and the lady that raised me, that's my mama. When telling me about the adoption, she told me, she said, I just want you to know that out of all these kids we got here, you're special because we got to pick you. And all these other knotheads, we just kind of got what God gave us. I wanted to be accepted. I wanted to fit in. I didn't feel that way anymore. So I set me apart. I made the decision to withdraw from people. I went to school. I didn't have a girlfriend. I never dated anybody. If you ever meet anybody that says they dated me, they're lying. I just met them and married them. Been married 9 times. Who hollered a woo? I'm kidding. I've not been married 9 times, just 5. If you say 9 first, 5 don't sound so bad. How can I stand up here and talk about this like this and make fun of me? Because we got Jesus. Yeah. He gets to decide. He says I'm forgiven. I was arrested March 14th, 2001 for grand theft to support my methamphetamine habit. And I remember waking up in jail, realizing, after going through withdrawal, of course, realizing that I'd hurt, cheated, and lied to and stole from every single person that I knew and loved and cared about. And for the first time in my life, God allowed me to have a good memory. And I remembered everybody I had lied to, everybody I hurt. And I never felt more ashamed in my life. And I fell down on my knees beside my bed and I said, okay, God, please help me. I don't want to be this person that spent his whole life hating himself anymore. I don't want to be a thief. I don't want to be a liar. No matter how long I got to stay in jail, and I know, Lord, I'm looking at 6 to 15 years. If you want me to stay here every day of that, I'm okay with it. But I don't want to walk out of here being the same person that I've been my whole life. I don't want to walk out of here feeling like that person anymore. Like I hate me, and I got to use you to make me feel better about me. Change me. And if I could, I already would have. Can you fix you? Can you change you? No, but we can connect with somebody who can. Our Creator. God created us, and He can change us. He can fix us if we become willing to do the work. There's work involved. It ain't always easy. It sucks sometimes. I came up from that prayer knowing that I had to make things right, and so I started calling people from jail that I'd stolen things from, that I'd hurt, I'd lied to. I confessed. They weren't happy. But before I made every call, I said, Jesus, I got to call Rachel. I hurt her, and I don't know how to make this right, but you do. Please make this phone call with me. And I learned that when you call people from jail, it's a collect call. They got to want to talk to you. I got Rachel on the phone, and I told her the truth. I stole your guitar, and I'm so sorry. It's in the pawn shop down on Charlotte Avenue. Please go get it out before they sell it. I love you, and I know you're mad. You got every right to be. If you want to press more charges, you ain't got to look for me. I'm already in jail. But I hope one day you can find it in your heart to forgive me. I'm so sorry. I don't know when I'll get out, but I'm looking at 6 to 15 years, and when I do get out, I'll pay you everything I owe you, I promise you. I had to call 30 people like that and just tell them the truth. They were angry. By the time the conversation was over with, though, every single one of them said, yeah, I'm mad, I'm hurt, but I forgive you. And you can pay me back when you get out of jail, and I hope you get better. That's what happens when you take Jesus on a phone call. I had to go in front of the judge. Finally, I've been in jail for 96 days. And it was crazy. I said one simple prayer because I learned to pray in jail. I was saved when I was 15 years old. I ran my whole life because I want God in my life, don't you? Yeah. We want God to run our lives, don't you? Yeah. But we want God to run our lives the way we want Him to run it. So I ran. But let me tell you what, that day going in front of the judge, and this story is so much longer, and I don't want to talk over, but there's a CD back there called Reckless. It's my story. We recorded it live at a big church in Philadelphia, Mississippi. I go in front of the judge, and I learned to pray a simple prayer, and it is, God, whatever you want to happen is okay with me. That's it. Amen. And so I walk in the courtroom, and the judge says, oh, it's you. Drug addict. Thief. Stupidest thief I ever met in my life. I've never seen a thief break into people's houses and put stuff back. How many thieves do you know that breaks into people's houses and puts stuff back? Anybody? I don't either, but I did. Because I didn't want to be that either. Spent half my life being unhappy with who I was, the other half of my life unhappy with who I was. The judge says, come here. We're going to settle this right now. 15 years. And he banged the gavel. And then he said, suspended. He said, son, I want you to get out of my courtroom. I want you to go get a job. I want you to pay back your lawyers, pay back the people you stole from, pay your court costs, your court fees. Be a productive member of society. Go to 90 AA meetings in 90 days or 90 NA meetings in 90 days. Go to church. You got 1 year probation, and if I catch you back in here in my jail, my cord. You're going to serve every second of 15 years. Now get out of here. And I walked out of jail, a free man. I got a job pouring concrete. My very first paycheck, I went and paid Rachel back. Next paycheck, somebody else. Over a period of 5 to 7 years, I wound up paying back $582,000. God provided a means. Not only do we have a Savior who will forgive us, we have a Savior who will make every step with us in the direction of making things right with others and making things right with ourselves. It starts right here with becoming willing to work toward treatment, to work toward making things right, to work toward making yourself better. It starts right here in making things available for people like me. Jobs weren't available. I met a guy in an AA meeting who said, "Can you pour concrete?" And I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "It ain't easy." I said, "But nothing I've done up to this point has been easy anyway. I'm willing." He said, "If this is your chance, you mess it up, it's you." This coming March 14th, I'll celebrate 19 years being drug and alcohol free. I owe every clean and sober day to my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, first of all. And a support team. For people here who are working to help people like me recovery, thank you. For people here who are like me and still in recovery, but got to go out and reintegrate into society, here's my suggestion. It's what helped me. Change your friends. Can't go hang out with who I used to hang out with. I'm better off if I don't live where I lived before either. Because I can tell you that 15 years after getting drug-free, it still hurt me to see me when I would pass by in Little Rock, Arkansas, the house I lived in when I started doing drugs. I saw me every time I passed by there. It hurt me. Today, it's gone, and I'm glad of it. Change people you hang out with, change the places you live, move on. Surround yourselves with people like me who are funny and talented. I'm kidding. Surround yourselves with people of like mind. People who you have what I want. You have what I want. And for those of us who are here to help others, let's exhibit the kind of humanity, compassion, strength, fortitude. Show them the kind of person that has what they want. I love y'all.
Thank you so much, Jeff. This has been a fantastic day. I'm going to make a few quick thank yous and announcements before he sings for us. Check out the back of your program. There are some special thanks here. And if you were new today and someone invited you and you kind of want to connect to us or work through us to connect to some of these organizations, obviously their tables are back there. But we have how you can join us and how you can donate and how you can connect. Our next monthly meeting will be in February, so come on out and join us. Jeff will have some merchandise and CDs back here if anyone is interested after the program. Blue lanyards. Oh, I left my lanyard on the table. We got if you're a member and you have one of our GGRA lanyards that you got, we're going to be collecting them out here so we can hand them out next month at our meeting. So make sure you take that off now, and that way you'll hand it off as you go out the door. Brendan, real quick, he's walking out the door. What about the other people who have the printed name tags? Okay. I want to quickly thank Brendan and Taylor Davis, who really, y'all, I went out of the, yes. I went out of the country from December 26th until this past Saturday. And this would not have happened if, this today would not have happened if they hadn't really made sure that all the T's were crossed and all the I's were dotted and not the other way around while I was gone. So they did a lot, and they really held down the fort. And I also want to thank the volunteers that came in and helped out today. Andre Matveychuk, Brian DiNapoli, Candace Morrow, Melissa Cook, and Tanaja English. Y'all give them a hand. They helped out with check-in. And now I want to thank you all of you who came today, for the work that you do. May you leave today more educated, encouraged, inspired, and driven. And before we part, we're going to welcome Jeff back to perform his original song, 1 Second Chance.
There it is. Hey, thank y'all for having me. Rachel, I appreciate you more than you know. The governor, thank him. Everybody that's spoken today. I love your hearts, I love your minds, and I love your spirit. I appreciate you. I could have used you about 20 years ago. Oh, you're amazing, seriously. We have with Jeff-based ministries. We go out and speak to churches. We go to prisons. We'd love to come to yours. The day my best friend died, he was the first person to ever give me a second chance. He came to see me in a dream the night before, and that's for real. I was at Angola in Louisiana, and man, we had a great time there, sharing recovery through Jesus. Those guys. I love y'all. Says here you're from Houston, you're certified to drive a truck. It doesn't say what you've been doing the last 5 years. Then I watched his eyes keep reading. Then I watched his eyes look up and watched another job I needed disappear. 'Cause when they get to the line, have you been convicted of a crime? They say thanks for coming in and they don't call you back. Well, I ain't asking for every job under the sun. I just want one second chance. On August 22nd, little Jacob's turning 5. But his mama moved him half a state away. She left another message on her phone at home last night. And she finally had her lawyer call today. She knows I can't afford to take this thing to court, and I'm trying hard to make her understand. Well, I ain't asking for every job under the sun, and I ain't asking for every weekend. I just want one second chance. I was young and I was stupid. I regret it every day. I ain't saying I didn't do it, but I paid for my mistakes. It's a lost and empty feeling when they don't want you around. Yeah, I finally got my freedom, but what good is it now? Some days when it feels like it's been 100 years. Sometimes it seems like only yesterday. We were painting Jacob's nursery, counting days till he was here. Next thing I knew, I'd thrown it all away. Now I know I can't go back to the life I used to have, when I still held the whole world in my hands. I had a job, I had a wife, I had a son. Now I just want one. Second chance.